Hey, everybody. Do you know anyone, young or old, that does not like ice cream? I doubt you do because we all love it and for good reason. It tastes good, it brings back childhood memories, and it helps to create new memories of our own today. Well, Molly Moon Neitzel realized all of this while working at an ice cream shop in college, and that's what helped to inspire Molly Moon's homemade ice cream shops now scattered throughout the Pacific Northwest. Molly has paid her dues along the way. She worked 4 part-time jobs while writing her business plan. And then the next year in 2008, she opened her first shop. She will open her 12th location later this year. And she's done it in a way that advocates for her employees through substantial benefits and competitive wages. Molly is a very busy woman, as you will hear. And I hope that the story of building her ice cream empire will inspire you. So let's get to the sweet science of ice cream with Molly Moon Neitzel. Molly Moon Neitzel, thanks for joining me. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me.
Where do we find you today? Are you working in the office or working from home? Where are you?
I'm sitting in my dining room.
Gotcha. And how do you spend your day? I'm curious because you have what, 10, 12 shops now, and how are you spending your time moving around at all those places?
Well, I have a funny living situation. I am divorced and have two little girls, and my ex-husband and I do a thing called bird nesting. So the house that we've raised our girls in, we split time in. The girls, basically the kids kept the house.
Yes, I've heard of this.
Okay, so the little baby birds stay in the nest all the time, and the mama bird and the daddy bird come and go. So I woke up in the nest this morning and I got the girls, made pancakes, got the girls ready for school, took them to school. They, of course, inconveniently go to two different schools that are 20 minutes on I-5 away from each other. So I drove really far north in Seattle to drop one off at a school. And then I drove home and brushed my teeth because I had forgotten to do that and let the dog out. And then I got back on I-5 and drove really far south to visit a construction site in West Seattle and pick some paint colors and check in on the construction of a new shop that we're building in West Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
And talked about a couple things with our superintendent there, was there for about 45 minutes, and then was like, oh gosh, I got to go run back home so I can record a podcast. So got back on I-5, talked to our marketing director about a couple initiatives on the way here. And now I'm talking to you. When you and I get done, I will probably take a brisk walk, talk to my CFO while I do that, and then settle in at a coffee shop to answer emails for a few minutes and start to work on my speech for our summer kickoff event, which is our big sort of motivate the team for our high summer sales season. So that's a little bit of a day in the life. I'm never in one place for more than, I would say, 2 hours in any given work day. So I work a little bit from home, a little bit from the office. We do have an office on Capitol Hill, but I'm constantly visiting construction sites and shops or having coffees or lunch dates with either coworkers or, external folks that we're working with, or I'm speaking or I'm attending a lunch or things like that.
You've summarized what it is to be a business owner, and a working mom and all of, I mean, that day in the life right
Oh
there.
yeah, and then 50% of the days I quit at 2:30.
Yes.
And I pick kids up and I do kids from 2:30 to 8:30, and then I get back on my computer and work, until I can't see straight anymore.
Yeah.
And then on days that I don't have my girls, I'll, work a longer day till 5 or 6.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I know that drill. And it's a lot. It's a lot. But in researching you and your story, you seem like a person that was always intended to own their own business. I mean, it just feels like that was in your DNA. Does that seem correct?
Looking back, that seems like it could be the only story, but I think, all of us have a lot of lives in us.
Mm,
I think I could have been a stay-at-home mom.
mm,
That I think I could have been totally happy to do that. Honestly, I love just raising my kids. And I would have been the most engaged, parent teacher association,
mhm,
on a few boards, stay-at-home mom there ever was. Um, I also think I could have been a great work for someone else person. I know now, because I haven't had a boss since I was 23, I could never have a boss again.
right.
Like now I don't know how to report to someone at 46 years old, and I wouldn't be good at it. And I have been fired for being too bossy. So
Mhm.
maybe you're right. Um but sorry, I have really bad asthma right now. I think I could have I could have been successful in like a marketing team.
Mhm.
Um but yeah, I've got an entrepreneurial spirit. I
Yeah.
had grandparents who were small business owners, and my dad always ran his own business, and grandparents on the other side who my grandma was the chief of staff for a congressperson, so she was kind of always in charge too.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so you grew up in, Idaho, Pocatello, Idaho, is that right?
So I was born in Pocatello, Idaho,
Uh,
but I mostly grew up in Boise, in the
okay,
capital
Boise,
of
and so
Idaho.
that's where
Yeah.
you your grandparents and your dad were probably the biggest influences as far as business owners, would you say?
Yeah, my grandparent both of sets of grandparents were super influential. I lived within 2 miles of both of them.
Mm,
They both took care of me a lot, and then both my parents were really influential. My mom was an archaeologist,
mm,
and then the Idaho State Historic Preservation Officer for the state of Idaho, and a really incredible woman, a total feminist and just a powerhouse of a woman. And she adopted me. I was uh, basically given up by my birth mom when I was
mhm.
4.5. And my mom that adopted me was my stepmom that then adopted me and really claimed me. And so I know what it feels like to be, abandoned. And then I know what it feels like to be chosen. And that also has informed a lot of kind of how I make my way through the world.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, I'm glad that you talk about that and you recognize that because I think, a lot of people are shaped by things like that and you know it, right? And you identify that. Um, Talk to me about your grandparents' operation. I think it was a hotel and bar they ran. Is that what was that experience like for you?
So before I was born, my grandparents on my mom's side owned the tallest hotel in Idaho. It was called the Boise Downtowner. And it was a pretty big deal, I think, in the 60s and 70s in Boise. It had like a fancy ballroom and a fine dining restaurant, and it had a casual like diner, and it had a beauty parlor and a barber shop, and it had a swimming pool, and it was where like the beauty pageants were. And my mom was the youngest of 3 kids in her family, and she's absolutely like the princess of this family, right? And she would just kind of get to be the daughter of this hotelier who could show up and like go to the diner and get an ice cream hot fudge sundae, or like go lay
Mm,
by the pool with the girls who were getting ready for the swimsuit competition for the pageant. Or she had the run of the place, and she could do whatever she wanted. So my mom had a little bit of that energy. um and my grandma definitely, like, and then I was the first granddaughter of that vibe. So,
yes.
and my grandma just definitely treated me like a princess too. Um But also, by the time I came along, those grandparents had lost the hotel and had had a really fancy restaurant that had failed, and they had declared bankruptcy.
Mm.
And then they had opened this bar that was very successful. And it was like the bar where the politician, the legislators and the lawyers and the judges hung out. Um, and they were doing well when in my early childhood. And so they'd had hard times, they'd had a lot of success, and they knew what all of that felt like. And they brought all of that energy to the table. And so really incredible hard work ethics. My grandparents went to this bar every day. My grandpa would cut the fruit and like fill all the liquor bottles in the back bar and like get the bar all ready. And my grandma would count the money and get the deposit ready and like do all the banking. And she would also, this is disgusting, and I've told this story many times, but it's worth telling.
Sure.
The bar had carpet.
Oh.
It
Oh
was a,
boy,
yeah,
that's not a good
that's
combo for a bar.
disgusting. Like,
Yeah.
what bars have
Ugh.
carpet? But it
Yeah.
was beautiful carpet, and the bar was really pretty. It was this old-fashioned saloon with pictures of my ancestors on the back wall. And my grandma would vacuum. Like, her jobs were do the banking and vacuum the carpet every
Okay.
day. Well, before she vacuumed, I would crawl around, starting at like age 5, crawl around on this carpet and pick up all the change that
Oh,
everyone dropped
okay.
the night before. And then she taught me how to roll penny rolls and dime rolls and all the money into rolls.
Yeah.
Kids don't even know what this looks like
No,
anymore. My
right.
daughters don't
They
know
don't
what
carry
this looks like.
change. Yeah.
Yeah. So then I would have all these rolls of money. And my grandma gave me a blue banker's bag, and my grandpa opened me a bank account at the bank where they banked. And so every day when they were done getting the bar ready, and they'd go down to the bar at 8:30 a.m. every morning.
Hmm.
My mom would drop me off there for childcare.
Hmm.
Um, and we'd go to the bank around 11 a.m. And my grandpa would, drive through teller. He'd put his bag in the drop box, and then he'd roll forward, roll down my window in the back seat, and I'd make my deposit and I'd get a lollipop.
Yeah.
And so then when I turned 12 and I started babysitting, my grandma was like, you keep half of that money, you put the other half in your bank account, you save it. And when I was a senior in high school, my parents didn't have any money. Like, neither
Hmm.
of them, they worked really hard, but they never like made enough to help me go to college. So I
Hmm.
needed to figure that out on my own. And I got awesome scholarships, but I paid for room and board my freshman year of college with that bar floor money and
Yeah.
half of my babysitting money.
Yeah. And you got all the lessons, like whether, you knew it or not, that are paying off still to this day. I mean, right. So
Totally.
when I said in your DNA that I'm sure that's part of it, that entrepreneurial spirit. It just feels like that's part of you. That's a great story. And then, so you end up in Montana, University of Montana in Missoula, is that right?
Yeah, that's where I went to school.
And that's where the Big Dipper was, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And talk about that. That's the ice cream shop you worked at.
Yeah. So I was a journalism major, and I'd wanted to be a journalist since I was like 8 years old. When I was in second or third grade, I became obsessed with Tom Brokaw. I
Mhm.
loved his voice. I watched the nightly news every night. My parents watched the nightly news, but I got really into the news pretty young.
Mhm.
I was really political, really young, because my grandma worked for a congressperson, and I was really into politics. I remember in third grade, I wore a I was really into Jesse Jackson running for
Okay.
president in 1988. My whole family was going to vote for Dukakis. And I was like, you guys, that guy is milk toast. Jesse Jackson is where it's at.
Okay.
He should be the next president.
Yeah.
And I made my grandma take me down to the Idaho State Democratic headquarters and get me a 3-inch Jesse Jackson button to wear on my denim jacket to school
Okay.
in Idaho.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Like,
In
I don't
Idaho.
even think I had met a Black person
Yeah.
in 1988 I don't think I had in
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
Um, but I was all about him on the news. I just thought he was so inspiring. And so uh I wanted to be a journalist. I love Tom Brokaw. I love Gwen Ifill. Those were my people. I was on the student newspaper as soon as I could be in junior high. I was the editor of my school newspaper in high school. I got to University of Montana. I was a journalism major. I was there on a journalism scholarship. And so, my mom was like, okay, you can get a work study job at the NPR radio station. So I did that. I hated it.
What
It
did
was
you hate
so
about it?
boring.
Boring.
It was so boring. And they wouldn't let me write any news or work on the news as an 18-year-old. They were like, no, go work in the development department on fundraising. And you'll collect, NPR is so funny and weird, and it was really funny and weird in 1997. It was like, go collect jam. It was the weirdest job. Go
Jam?
collect basically gifts
Yes.
that when people make pledges to the station, they're going to get a gift.
Okay.
And so my job was to go find weird gifts from the community.
Jam's a hot commodity, apparently. And
I was picking up jars of jam. I hated it so much. And I just felt like this isn't journalism. This has nothing to do with anything I want to do. It was so boring. And I was filing. I hated it so much. And all I would do is I would walk home from that job and I would like hang on the fence and watch these kids play at a campus daycare because I love kids. And I would complain to my mom on the phone on our Sunday night phone calls. And she would go, and I would also say, like, there's this ice cream shop. I just want to go work at the ice cream shop or like work at this daycare. I knew I had to have a job. I needed to work like at least 15 hours, if not 20 hours a week while I was in school. And my mom was like, Molly, you can't just babysit and scoop ice cream your whole life. You need to get serious. She was really mad. Turns out my whole life has been about scooping ice cream with
yes.
kids. So, mom. So I quit my NPR job probably like in the spring of my freshman year. I went and got a job at the ice cream shop and I went and got a job at the daycare. And I just like played with kids every afternoon. I scooped ice cream a few nights a week. And then that summer, I think Charlie, the owner of the ice cream shop, taught me how to make ice cream. I learned how to make homemade ice cream. I got really good at it. And I worked there for 4 years and I loved it. And I had every job and I took a lot of pride in it. And I just kind of fell in love with the whole thing that an ice cream shop in a town does. So it's not just ice cream shops are not just ice cream shops. They're multi-generational community gathering places. And something that I missed in college and missed when I first moved to Seattle was the like a college community can be a very isolating experience if you came from a really multi-generational place. And the way I grew up in a family with like at least 20 cousins around at all times. And like, so there's always a birthday. There's a birthday like every weekend in my family. And I had 2 great grandmothers. I had 4 grandparents. I had tons of cousins, tons of aunts and uncles, so many neighborhood friends. Like my world was age diverse and just like it was multi-generational life was really important to me. And
Mhm.
then to go to college and be like, everyone is 18 to 22. Like the perspective is so narrow.
Yeah.
This isn't real life. This is fake.
And you're
I
cut off
hated
from
it.
that connection, that family connection somewhat, right?
I really hated it. And so working at a daycare, and then later I was a nanny in college, but working at the Big Dipper, it was like, oh, cool. This is real life. I'm interacting with families, with old people,
Mhm.
with teenagers, with awkward middle schoolers, with the range of life,
Yeah.
with poor people and rich people and people who've like scraped together change out of their car to treat themselves to this $4 scoop of ice cream. And this is like a big deal, all the things, all the experiences that ice cream, like, it's just a universal pleasure, you know?
Yes, I agree. Yeah.
So the Big Dipper got me just really hooked on what an important community gathering place an ice cream shop can be.
So that seed is in your mind as a, or a college student. You didn't then directly go open your own shop. You did some political work, I think,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, and how did that experience influence does that influence you today as a businesswoman? What did that impact? What impact did that have on you, I guess?
Yeah. So a couple years after I graduated college, I started volunteering for a PAC called Music for America that had been born out of the Howard Dean for President campaign
Mhm.
in 2003. And that deal was like registering voters at concerts and then turning them out for initially Howard Dean's campaign and then to vote for him in the presidential primaries in 2004. But then it became just a national political organization that partnered with bands and music venues to register young voters and then turn them out for progressive candidates across the country. And I was the
Mhm.
executive director of that organization from 2003 to 2007. And that work was amazing. It was really fun. I got to travel to more than half the states in the nation, see a lot of amazing music, and feel like we really influenced a lot of state and local races and some national races and have an influence on American politics in the mid aughts.
Mhm.
But I got pretty tired of asking rich people for money, which is mostly what the job of a executive director of a nonprofit is.
Right.
And I was kind of whining on the phone one night to my mom again about that and thinking, it's time for me to maybe stop this. I'd done it for like 4 or 5 years. And my mom was like, Molly, why don't you just open an ice cream shop? She's like, you know how to do it.
Yeah.
You've got small business. You know how to run a small business. Um, and then you can be your own boss. You obviously can do that now. And my mom thought my politics were pretty radical. She
Mhm.
was from the more conservative Republican side of the
Mhm.
family, the hotel owners and bar owners. And she was like, you can put all your weirdo politics into your business and see if it works. So in the year 2007, I had been living in San Francisco running this nonprofit. I moved back to Seattle. I had 4 jobs. I was a nanny. I worked at J. Crew because I wanted to see what their strategy was with. I had read a couple articles about how J. Crew managed their staff to daily sales goals really well and kind of inspired them to meet daily and even hourly sales goals really well. So I wanted to experience that from the employee side. So I worked at J. Crew. I was a nanny. I worked as a temp in City Hall for a city council person that needed some help on a noise ordinance law that I kind of cared about. And I was Dow Constantine's campaign manager in
Okay.
2007. And then I carved out a few hours every Tuesday morning and wrote a business plan for an ice cream shop.
So that
And it was,
I think Molly, I think that's such a key point, and this podcast is called "Pay Your Dues," is
yeah,
that you worked 4 jobs. You didn't have any money. You had an idea, and you didn't just go out and just just start it out of thin air. You worked 4 jobs, and with the idea that you were also then carving out time to do a business plan.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, I think that's such a key point. I just like pointing that out because, you know, people people have ideas, but they never start. They never start the
Right,
business plan, or they never start the second or third job to make the money to get
right.
so, all these things are tie in together, right? And it's the momentum that led you to that first shop. So what
Yeah.
happened
I mean,
next? You're
starting a business is not easy.
right. Yeah. It is very
I for
difficult.
sure paid my dues. So I had those 4 jobs. I had an apartment that was $800 a month. I had a puppy. I had no other expenses. And, I did not go out to eat. I did go out for coffee.
Mhm.
That is the one thing I went out for because I am a Seattleite. Um, and I worked on that business plan for like literally, I had 3 hours a week. And I started working on it in December of 2006. And I finished it in September of 2007.
Mm.
And I was ready to ask investors to invest in my idea in September of 2007. And I flew to San Francisco on my credit card. I had no money. I had $42 in my bank account.
Wow.
It was mid-September, and this was all strategically timed because I was like, I don't have any money. I'll get paid before rent is due. I have to do all this on my credit card right now.
Mhm.
I flew to San Francisco on my credit card, and I asked my mentor from Music for America, who had been the president of my board, for the biggest chunk, a third of what I needed. I needed $200,000. I
Mm.
asked him for $66,000.
Mhm.
He said yes at lunch.
Yeah.
I flew down there for one night. Then I went out to dinner with an ex-boyfriend and I asked him for $40,000 and to pay for dinner. And he said yes.
Okay.
And I stayed the night at his house and I flew home the next day. And I had raised $106,000.
So you were halfway there.
Mm-hmm. And then I asked another ex-boyfriend in Seattle. He made me go out to lunch with his parents
Oh boy. These
and asked,
ex-boyfriends must really, you must have left broken up on good terms because they're investing in you after the fact.
yeah, or they just think I'm smart.
Yeah, they like the
Um,
business idea.
right. So, and they invested $50,000, that their family.
A family. Hmm.
So then I had 156,000. And I have 8 investors. So, and then it just trickled from there.
Mm-hmm.
All just like former boyfriends or colleagues.
Yeah. That's how you do it. That's how you
Yeah.
bootstrap it, right? So then how do you find that how do you determine where the first shop is and, everything that goes into finding that first location?
Well, like I said, I wrote my business plan over like 8 months.
Hmm.
So I research everything. So I knew that the households that eat the most ice cream are higher than average household income and higher than average kids per household. And households that have teenagers, um, so like mature, how high, lots of kids and mature kids.
Maturing, yeah.
So then I looked at the census data in Seattle for those households. And the zip codes that met that criteria, the top 2 zip codes, were 98102 and 98103. or 98112 and 981, no, 98102 and 98103. So I got a real estate broker and I said, show me spaces under 1,000 square feet in these 2 zip codes. And the first space she showed me was my shop in Wallingford.
Uh-huh. And it's still there today.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. And so what was it like the first day? You remember opening day?
Oh my gosh. Yes.
And
May
describe
10th,
what that
2008.
May 10th, 2008.
Yeah.
What did that feel like, and describe that?
Well, I mean, I think back up, like one of the most amazing and memorable feelings is the day that I like had gotten the keys a couple days before and we were supposed to start construction, but I knew that construction was going to cost more than I raised.
Hmm.
And so I went in there with a flat nose shovel and I demoed the floor by myself.
Oh, good for you.
You know, like your podcast is called to Pay Your Dues. Like that was an exhilarating feeling.
Yes.
I did it myself. My little sister was 20 years old. She moved in with me, slept in my bed in my studio apartment. We primed that entire place and it had 13-foot ceilings. Like we did so much of that shop ourselves because I had raised 200,000. Oh, and then I had to go find a last minute investor. So I actually raised $220,000. But I can't imagine building an ice cream shop, by the way, for $220,000 now. Your
Yeah.
friend, Paul, who introduced us,
Yes.
I mean, he's building my ice cream shops now for like $850,000.
Really? Is that right?
You know,
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
construction is so expensive.
Yes.
But I did so much of that shop myself, and it was basically built out of plywood
Yeah.
because I just had to, get it done
You had
for
to make
so
it
cheap.
work.
Yeah. But we did so much of it ourselves. And then I realized that like we had to build this weird loft to get to store stuff. And I'd run out of money. I didn't know what I was going to do. My dad came from Idaho and built these weird stairs behind the freezer to make that work. Like I just bootstrapped the heck out of it.
Yeah. That's awesome. That is the classic bootstrap, getting the business started. I think what's unique though also about your business is the way you run it. I mean, I know it's grown, but you've also taken a very active approach with your employees, right? And maybe talk about that, because I think you foreshadowed some of that with the interactions that you've had, and really creating a space that it's career oriented for some of them, right? And I think that's really important, and probably a stickiness that with your employees to stay for longer than most retail jobs.
Yeah. So, one of the reasons that I started the business and like was whining to my mom on the phone about how I didn't know what I was going to do with my life after Music for America is, um, I feel like I was put on the planet to make the world a better place, and I don't want to just have a job to have a job. And so, what really got me inspired to write a business plan was I was like, oh, I wonder if I can, instead of running a nonprofit and asking rich people to give me money to run a nonprofit. And most of them, what felt gross about that is a lot of them, I think, had made money in ways that they didn't feel totally great about.
Mm,
And then they were giving me money to sort of assuage their guilt.
mm,
I was like, what if I could make for-profit money in a way that I feel amazing about and just make the world better through, like, with capitalism, but be doing, like, actually making the world better in the thing that I'm doing. So you're making the world better every time you hand someone a scoop of happiness. Right there, you're making the world better. But then can it also be tied to like living wages and free health insurance and organic ingredients and local ingredients and supporting local farmers? And that was the original idea. And then since then, we've added on to, so all of those things were true. We had free health insurance from the beginning. local ingredients, a lot of organic ingredients, living wages. And that's how I started the business. And I think one of the reasons that Molly Moons was so successful and we had lines around 3 corners of the block on opening day is I was telling people that this is what I'm about. And Seattleites eat that up.
Yeah.
That was so exciting to people. It was artisan ice cream. It was homemade. It was delicious. There were local ingredients. They could feel super good about the product. It was yummy. It was making them happy. And also, all their progressive values were baked into it or churned into it.
Yeah.
But then so we've been in business now 17 years. We employ 200 people.
Wow.
And we've added on to that. So now we have 12 weeks of paid family leave. And we've been doing that since way before Washington State had that law. And, the paid family leave law in Washington State is awesome and great and necessary, but it's not 100% of your pay. So we top you off. All of our employees get 100% of their pay for 12 weeks. We match everyone. We have a 401k and we match up to 3% of your income. And we start people contributing to 401ks when they're 18 years old, which no one else does. And, the power of compound interest when you're 18 is incredible. And one of our mottos at Molly Moons is life-changing jobs. So a lot of people don't know this, especially people with privilege who've gone to college and are white and educated and doing the upper middle class thing. Only 30% of Americans go to college. And the rest of the 70% should have an opportunity to just go get a job and get their way into the middle class. And that's possible at Molly Moons. You can get a scooper job when you're 17 or an ice cream maker job. And in 7 years, you can work your way up to making $95,000 a year. And then you're going to get cost of living increases and performance increases every year after that. And you can just have a comfortable middle class, great job for a career.
That's
And
awesome.
support a family.
That's awesome. And what was this was all in the business plan? Was this all what you were thinking about as you were launching it?
All these benefits were not in the business plan because some of them had to be informed by my lived experiences.
I see.
When I wrote the business plan, I was 28.
Yeah.
And I wasn't thinking about having babies. I wasn't thinking about paid family leave. I should have been thinking about retirement, but I wasn't. We subsidize Orca passes. I wasn't thinking about that. So we've layered on a lot of benefits since I started. I just started with free health insurance. I knew that was really important. And living wages and all the sustainability stuff. We were the first food business other than one place on the UW campus to have compostable spoons in Seattle.
Is that right? Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is funny now because it's like law.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
So that's ice cream in itself is a feel-good story. And then the way your business runs is a feel-good story that people have responded to, right? People have certainly responded to, and you've expanded this now, which is it 10? You have 10 to 12 shops? How many places do you have now?
We have 9 ice cream shops today. But we're opening number 10 in like 3 weeks and number 11 in like 6 weeks and number 12 like end of the year or early next year.
Yeah, coming along.
Yeah.
So how do you talked about it before about all these, your day to day, right? And so to build the business, to have 200 plus employees, I mean, you have to rely on a lot of good people. And so how do you decide where you spend your time?
That's such a good and fun question today, Greg, because I just had a really impactful conversation with my CFOO yesterday about this, about how that's changing and
Mm.
needs to morph right now. And something that I learned really early in my business career, 16 or 17 years ago, is one of the most fun things about business is how creative it is. It's like art. And I
Hmm.
didn't know that before I got into business. There are even fewer rules in business than there are in the nonprofit world, really. Um, you really get to just make it up.
Yeah, you can do what you want, right? I mean,
Kind of, I mean, it's scary,
yeah.
really. Um, what was your question?
Well, how do you choose to spend your time?
Yeah. Okay, so, in the beginning, when I had one ice cream shop, there are no choices. You just have to do everything.
Hmm.
But I remember the first summer we were so successful. It was just mind blowing. We did more sales in the first 2 months than I thought we were going to do in a year.
Is that right? Wow.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
And within the first 90 days, I signed a lease for our second location.
Yeah.
And I was talking to my mentor and our biggest investor, who's like a second dad to me and my most trusted advisor. And I was trying to make this decision if I was ready to open a second shop. And a second shop wasn't in the business plan. The business plan was for one ice cream shop. I was going to open an ice cream shop. I was going to buy myself a job. And that was good. There, there is no business plan, by the way, beyond one ice cream shop. I've
Right.
never written anything past that. Now we're just, for the last 17 years, we're just by the seat of our pants
That's
over here.
funny.
Um, but he was like, what do you do? Like, what is your day like? This is the summer of 2008. And I was like, well, I kind of don't have to do anything. I just kind of put out fires. But I have this really awesome staff. And I stopped making ice cream about a month ago. And I have this great shop manager who manages all the employees. And, sometimes we run out of stuff. I might go get stuff at cash and carry, but I don't have to do that. I could make Sam do that. He was like, okay, yep, open another shop. You're ready.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
And so every time I get to a point where I'm like, I want to grow or I want to change my job or I want to, do more or bigger, I want to go bigger. I ask myself, and now I can ask myself that question, all the stuff that I do I need to be doing it? Or are there other people in the organization that really can do it?
Hmm.
And I had a really interesting conversation yesterday with our CFOO, and she was basically telling me that my whole leadership team had a conversation when I wasn't there where they were like, why is Molly involved in running stuff? She should just be out doing the stuff that only she can do, which is inspiring the employees, being a brand ambassador,
Hmm.
um, you know, sales, really outward facing, being the inspiring leader that only she can be. And that's exactly what I want to be doing, Greg. I
Hmm.
don't want to go to construction meetings anymore. I don't want to go to finance meetings anymore. I hate operations. When my leadership team starts talking about operations, I drift off. So it was I think she was a little scared to be giving me this feedback. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the most freeing conversation I've ever had.
Yeah. Do you find it hard is it going to be hard to let go of some of that? I mean, just because you're so, maybe not the finance part or the meeting that bores you, the operations,
The
but
ops stuff.
yeah,
No, I mean, it's not going to be hard. No,
good.
I think it feels super freeing, and I'll stay really plugged into the finances. I love
Yeah, of
numbers.
course.
Um, but I don't need to hold anybody's hand on
You
my
have
team.
good
They
people that
are
you trust.
amazing. I have the best leadership team we've
Mm,
ever had in 17 years. They all do their jobs super, super well. And I probably have 25% of my calendar is full of stuff that I'm doing out of a sense of guilt around like earning my paycheck.
mm,
And if the people that work for me are saying, you don't need to be here, and I can go really earn my paycheck at the next level and be like pushing the brand forward
right.
and doing higher level sales and thinking about writing the book about, you know, how we have done what we've done and where we're going to go and how other businesses can do this too, which is what I've wanted to do for years,
Mhm.
is inspire other businesses to have the kind of benefits that we do and operate the way that we do so that more workers can have life-changing jobs like our workers get, so that you don't have to win the boss lottery.
Mhm.
Like that's what I want to do
Yeah.
next.
Yeah, well, that's leadership, right? That's leadership is delegating, letting go, having good people around you. And as a bootstrap entrepreneur, it's hard to do that sometimes, right? So it sounds like it's certainly evolving and it's certainly working. One thing I think about, with all the hats you have to wear, the flavors, right? You guys have staple flavors and you're always having these new flavors come up. So,
Mhm.
explain how you guys make decisions on that and how you're involved with that, because I think that's a big part of the brand, because it's hard to make a choice there sometimes.
Yeah, oh good, I'm glad. Yeah, that's something I'll always stay involved with, but even that has morphed. So we have 10, no, we have 11 always flavors. And then we have 4 seasonal flavors a month. So we have 48 new flavors come out a year.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. And
Who gets to
we
test all
try
those?
a big group of us.
Yes, I
Yeah.
bet.
But I'm the ultimate decider. It's like my palate that says, yes, go. Um, so we try to be working about a year ahead of time so that when we are tasting, especially seasonal
Mhm,
fruit,
mhm,
we're using like in season cherries
mhm.
when we're approving a cherry flavor, you know?
Yes.
Um, so that's so we our head chef, we have many chefs in our company because we make homemade ice cream in every neighborhood. Every shop is making its own homemade ice cream in that shop. We don't have a factory.
Right. That's very interesting. And what's the strategy behind that?
More life-changing jobs.
Yeah.
I don't want just like a giant machine pumping out a bunch of ice cream that we're driving to all these neighborhood shops. We have tons of
Mhm,
competitors that do that.
mhm,
And that actually employs very few people. I want to create a career pathway. Like you can start as an ice cream maker in one of our kitchens and you can rise to head pastry chef. And there are culinary jobs that are
mhm.
good jobs that take culinary creativity in our company.
And
So,
the product's better. I mean, it's fresh, it's right there, it's
yeah,
not
yeah,
melting while driving in a truck
yeah,
somewhere, right?
yes, yeah,
Yeah, so there's
yeah. And
it's a
we're
double win.
getting milk, cream, and sugar delivered to every shop that's being turned into ice cream, setting overnight in our freezers and scooped the next day.
That's great.
So that's not happening at other ice cream
Yeah,
shops.
yeah, yeah, that's cool. Sorry, I got you off track there on the flavors. So, um, how much decision making goes into, like, how many flavors get rejected?
Well, okay, so the way it works is like quarterly, we'll have a big concept meeting where we'll have tons of ideas. Well, we'll look at the calendar and we'll be like, okay, here's Q2, right? Which is April, May, June. What are the flavors that have to come back every year because people expect them.
Mhm.
Well, May is our birthday month. And so that's always going to be full of cake flavors. That's just what we do.
Mhm.
And April, we don't have any flavors that always have to come back in April. But June is Pride Month, and it's the Pride Cone. And
Mhm.
it's a rainbow cone that we stack,
Mhm.
and we do it every year. So there are always flavors that are going to be in the Pride Cone because of the colors that go in the Pride Cone. So there's not a ton of room for new in any given quarter. There might be, half the flavors are going to be brand new, and half of them are going to be things that are going to come back from previous years. So we'll slot in the things that are going to come back from previous years, and then we'll concept all the new stuff. And all the chefs will bring their ideas to the table. My marketing director is a really amazing product innovator. She'll bring her ideas to the table. I'll bring some ideas to the table. Our head chef is a really great innovator. And we'll just talk about what we think will work next year and what the food trends are and what we're seeing in other dessert trends. And then John T, our head chef, will assign R&D out to the other chefs. They will work on flavors. And then in a month or two, we'll have a big meeting where we'll all test and taste all of the things that they made that meet those concepts. And
Yeah.
then we'll say, oh my gosh, this is a winner, approved. Let's put this on the menu. Or we'll say this one needs more salt, or this, the marshmallow was weird in this one. And we'll come back. I probably attend a tasting almost once a month, maybe more. I don't know. The cadence
Yeah.
is weird. Like sometimes every tasting we go to, we're like, oh my gosh, approved, 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 approved. And sometimes we'll have a tasting and we're like, every single one of those needs to be redone.
Well, I mean, it's a big part to me. It seems like such a big part of the business because as a consumer, that's what
It's
that's
everything.
my experience, right? When I
Yeah.
go in and my daughters are like, they're talking about what flavor they want to try a couple flavors. And, if you're just running out the same ones all the time, I mean, that's a way to do it, but it's, having these choices and these new ideas is part of the experience as a
Totally.
consumer.
Yes, but it's all very informed by data too, I have to
Hmm.
say. Like
Hmm.
if a seasonal flavor is more than 9% of sales, it's going to be on the menu next year.
All right. Well, I like
So
anything coffee flavored, so keep those coming.
we always have one coffee flavor
Yeah,
on the
there's
menu.
always on there.
Yeah.
So when you talk about the evolution of the business, what do you think is next for you? When you said writing the book, do you mean literally you want to write a book? Is that part of one of your goals?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be good. That would be good. And then so that's you got to carve out time out for that. But what else is
Yeah.
I know you're here in the Northwest. Do you see yourself expanding into other markets, outside of the state, or where does that go?
Well, what I always say is that every neighborhood deserves a Molly Moons. But I'm not super passionate about the idea of national expansion. It sounds like a headache to me.
Mhm.
And I'll drive through another neighborhood in the Puget Sound region and I'll be like, why doesn't this neighborhood have a Molly Moons?
Mhm.
And so I think until I can't do that anymore, why would I go to New York?
Yeah.
That sounds like a logistical nightmare
Sure. Yeah,
and
but
a
that's a
management,
whole nother animal, right? A whole nother
right.
animal.
And a management nightmare. And I think that kind of expansion is driven by one of two things: ego or private equity, which
Right.
is kind of ego.
Right. Right.
And I'm never going to take private equity money.
So you probably get approached with that private equity money and the idea of franchising. I'm assuming
Like
that comes
at
to you.
least once a week, do I get emailed by a private equity firm?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's not part
No,
of your game plan, right?
I'm
I'm
not
not
giving up
surprised.
any more control. No, no.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, I think we're just gonna grow in the neighborhoods really smart in Western Washington in a way that doesn't cannibalize from our existing shops as much as possible.
Mhm.
Um, until that doesn't make sense anymore. And then we'll see. But like I probably only have 15-ish more years of doing this in me.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then I want to do something pretty creative when I retire in terms of company ownership. I'd like to give some of my ownership to the employees
Mhm.
and preserve how much we consider the employees as stakeholders in the company
Mhm.
long term so that it's always like this. And um, I want to really influence the way that medium size companies run. I think that's really the next big thing for me is
Yeah.
like, I've been running this company and growing it and being profitable with this life changing job strategy. And I'm making people's lives significantly better. Meanwhile, lobbying the government in Washington and making every Washingtonian's life better.
Mhm.
You know, we have paid safe and sick leave now that makes everyone's life better. We didn't
Mhm.
have that before, and I worked really hard to pass that. We have a minimum wage here that has lifted hundreds of thousands of people out of poverty.
Mhm.
We didn't have that before I worked on it. We have a paid family leave law that allows people to bond with their babies in a way that's going to, you know, make families stronger, make people able to have more babies in Washington state. You know, we didn't have that 4 years ago, 5 years ago.
Mhm.
Um, the stuff I work on has made actually millions of people's lives better. I want to keep doing that. And I want Molly Moons to influence Washington and American culture in that way while this dumpster fire of American politics goes on around us. I
Right.
actually think I can have huge impact, positive impact, while whatever happens in federal politics goes on. And I want to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. You've proven that. I mean, you are proving that. I think you've answered this, but is that the most when you look back at all of this 17 years, is that the most rewarding part of this whole journey is seeing the impact, this company has had on your employees and other lives? I mean,
Yeah,
what is
for
the most
sure.
rewarding?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like seeing the lives of my employees, seeing people who were worried about what their lives were going to be like, no longer be worried about what their lives are going to be like. My employees. And then they leave Molly Moons and they're successful, you know, beyond. It's not just about keeping them.
Mhm.
And seeing the laws, the stuff I've lobbied on and advocated for and the laws that have impacted millions of people's lives. That stuff is so rewarding. And I used to think that I wanted to run for office.
Mhm.
And I'm not totally ruling that out, but it's really cool to know that you can just get involved in policy advocacy work um, and build relationships with people who do want to be in office and are elected officials, and you can have really meaningful impact and see how changes in one policy affect people's lives. And not all of that stuff is going to get undone by this federal administration,
Mhm.
and how incredible like and life saving and life changing that stuff is. Yeah, that's like the
Yeah.
most rewarding work you can do.
And it's all tying back to those days in Idaho, all these elements and the impact that seeing your grandparents and your family, had on you. Which I think, the reason for telling your story is just so much more than a successful, business, ice cream business. It's all the elements you went into. And look, I have 2 teenage daughters, and we go into your shop, and to be able to say like, "Okay, Molly started this business on her own," I think seeing you write that book would be, helpful for a lot of people. So I'd love to see you do that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else you wanna share about the business or your plans? I mean, it's been a great recap on what you've done and really the essence of what our, podcast is all about. So, anything else we should be looking out for?
Get really excited about cherry season and s'more season and all of our exciting summer flavors.
Very good. Enough said. Well, thanks for joining us, Molly. We appreciate it. For those that are listening that are not in the Northwest, it's another reason to get up here and experience everything beautiful about the Northwest. But check out Molly's Moon. So, thanks for joining us. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much for having me.